Hi. I just thought I'd follow up on the snip that I sent you last week. I'm concerned that I'm not hearing anything about my submission last week, and I really believe that I can add huge value to your company, and I'm available to start. So, hence, I'm following up with you. And I thought it would be useful to share with you a presentation that I've put together with the intention of presenting it to you in person. But since I haven't yet had that opportunity, I thought I'd just record this and share it with you. So I'm going to share my screen and let's get going. Right. So the purpose of this presentation is to introduce myself and in the context of the role of strategic ERP project leader, which is what I've put forward to you. And my contention is that by appointing me, you will achieve a high value strategic outcome, which I'm bold enough to say to you will be much greater than you will get with anybody else you can find. I've got proprietary methods I've developed over 35 years that are leading edge and world class. And why they're not widely used is a separate conversation we can have when I meet you. So I want to talk about the role of the strategic project leader to develop the strategic requirements and the strategic critical success factors with the EXCO, and also possibly for finance operations, manufacturing, etc. In this role, I would meet regularly with the CEO and EXCO, providing advice to them. I provide high-level oversight and guide the project. And this presentation sets out the rationale with regard to what I'm proposing. It's a facilitative role, not a line or executive role. I'm not going to go around and tell your people what to do. I'm going to advise them what to do. And my advice will be substantiated and enforced by my relationship with your CEO in the form of delegated authority. It's a role I've defined and crafted over the years, and it's extremely powerful. A little bit about myself. I'm a professional engineer. Civil engineer, actually. Did fluid dynamics at university, so I understand pumps. I've actually stripped and rebuilt an Ingersoll Rand swimming pool pump, so I understand pumps at a pretty detailed level in terms of the working components. And I've developed over the years what I call an engineering approach to ERP. I have a grounding in economics. I worked for my dad's investment consultancy for 4 years after I finished my PhD research. And I learned then that clever IT solutions create substantial differentiated value. We also had military conscription in South Africa, so I was in the army part-time for many years, managed the NATO filing system. I ended up commanding a regiment of over 500 unwilling conscripts as a lieutenant colonel. The first ERP that I was ever exposed to was built from scratch. I project managed it and partially architected it very successfully, went on to become a commercial product, which unfortunately I didn't have the commercial savvy to participate in. I've been consulting on my own for many years. I have my own methods. As I say, an engineering approach. I've got over 1,000 hours of unremunerated R&D into the effective application of ERP and business systems. I've done dozens of conference presentations. I've written dozens of papers, and I've run courses on ERP effectiveness for many years. So I bring thought leadership, and I claim to be a strategic thinker. Collectively, this experience underpins and provides a different and better approach to ERP implementation, as presented here. And I really want to suggest for your consideration that I really am the right person for this role. And I appreciate that you've budgeted for a project manager. You haven't necessarily budgeted for this role. But I want to suggest to you, if you really want to get maximum value out of your investment, you need to talk to me. At least let's meet face to face and I can answer your questions. I want to stress that the role that I'm putting forward to you is not project management. It's operating at a different level, working directly with the chief executive. versus a more operational role for project management. As strategic project leader, I'm interested in the strategic 20% that will deliver 80% of the value. Project manager is focused on the 80% that delivers the operational outcome. It's too much for one person to do because I'm also proposing precision configuration, which I see as a logical extension of the strategic project leader. And the different focus results in conflicts of priorities if the project manager and the strategic project leader are trying to be done by one person. I've had a couple of experiences with it. I've tried to do both. It doesn't work. You're working with the operational staff a lot of the time, and therefore you lose your strategic relationship, if I can put it that way. In context, if you search on Google, this was shared with you last week, was Google search last week, percentage of ERP projects that do not deliver what was promised, and Gartner say 55 to 75%. I suggest for your consideration that Gartner is a very authoritative opinion. So, and I also want to suggest that this is a low estimate because expectations are dumbed down and people are somewhat reluctant to admit that their investment is not performing the way that they expected it to. And I'll share with you a bit later a classic example of that. And then something that I call sloppy configuration and lack of strategic alignment are key factors in this. And they're both areas that I claim particular expertise in. I've comprehensively documented the reasons for suboptimal outcomes and developed solutions that deliver high value practical outcomes, and that is a significant part of the value that I'm offering. Why do I say that CEO sponsorship is vital? Well, first and foremost, the CEO owns the holistic integrated view of the business. Everybody else is focused on their silos. The ERP impacts every part of the business, and the only person who has that integrated holistic view is the CEO. All other ExCo members are focused on their specific areas. And only the CEO has authority over everybody else in the business, which can be vital when it comes to making things work. So the SPL reports to the CEO and facilitates the integrated holistic view. I can't stress enough, to do the role that I'm proposing for you, I need to report directly to the CEO. And what I've seen, and I've tried it, any other SPL reporting line is a recipe for a suboptimal outcome or failure. I've had one or two projects that have succeeded not reporting to the CEO, but eventually something has cropped up with the CEO that has been less than ideal. So I strongly recommend CEO. CEO can be assisted clearly by CIO, COO, CFO, whatever, but the final overall governance of the project must rest with the CEO. How did I learn that this was vital? First project I ever did, the CEO took custody. I reported directly to him. I had an open door with him, and he fully supported and guided the direction of the project. The next two ERP projects, there was no CEO involvement. It was delegated to the Chief Financial Officer. Both were disasters. The following ERP project, the sponsor was a major shareholder, operational executive, and Chief Financial Officer. It went very well, but there were still issues with the CEO, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. I've tried various scenarios over many years. So you may say, well, James, you're a bit mature. Looking at your grey hairs, don't we need somebody a bit younger who's more au fait with the tech? Folks, this is not about tech. This is about what you do with the tech. It's about psychology. It's about governance. It's about strategy. And in that area, I have to suggest for your consideration that my grey hairs are a serious recommendation. I've investigated many failed and suboptimal projects and diagnosed why they failed and advised clients how to turn them around. In one case, where I had exceptional CEO custody, I delivered a solution which allowed them to secure a 12% uplift in turnover overnight. So just looking at that further, I'm advocating a top-down strategy-focused approach. The conventional ERP approach is what I would call a bottom-up process-focused approach. And as you can see by the diagram, coming from the bottom up, you're not sure where you're going. So the role of the CEO, supported by the strategic project leader together with precision configuration, is absolutely key, folks. And I have to say to you that ERP is a harsh judge of governance. Bad ERP decisions can wreck a business. A couple of examples. I did a pulse measurement investigation for a fairly young gold mining company in Johannesburg that was running two mines, one in the United States and one in South Africa, and running SAP R3. And I advised and my sponsor was the chief operating officer. The project sponsor had been the chief legal officer for goodness knows what reason. And the configuration was pretty much the worst I'd ever seen, and I advised them to re-implement. And I was told by the COO, we can't say that, the shareholders won't approve. 3 months later, they went bankrupt because they had no management information and they had no control over the business. So bad ERP with bad implementation, with bad governance, literally can destroy a business. ERP direction is therefore a CEO responsibility. It's not about technology, it's about strategic business support. And ERP is a collection of tools, and unfortunately, bad workmen blame their tools. So when it's not working, they say, well, we've got the wrong ERP. No, pretty much all the ERPs in the world today are capable of a high value implementation if done properly, using my methods, and they're all possible, have the potential to be an absolute disaster if done badly. So coming to the mining company that I just spoke about, whether they'd used SAP R3 or anything else, would have achieved the same result because the problem was not with the software, the problem was with the chart of accounts, etc. So an ERP will harshly judge a CEO who abdicates their responsibilities. There's a huge opportunity for creative thinking to add value. So it's my contention that a strategic project leader supporting the CEO is vital. I want to stress that it's a fundamental principle that the executive committee drives competitive advantage. A key responsibility of executives is innovation that will generate high bottom line value outcomes and materially raise profits. In other words, strategic outcomes. Executives therefore define the role of ERP in competitive advantage. And you may say to me, James, but this is an operational system. No, it's necessary for the operation of the business, but it has the potential to add dramatic strategic value, help differentiation, help profitability, help efficiencies, help effectiveness, if it's done right. Professor Michael Porter, the greatest barriers to strategy are often self-imposed and many are internal. Strong leadership by the chief executive officer is almost a necessity if strategy is to be created and implemented. And the only question I would have about that statement, as I'm not sure about almost, I would say it is a necessity if strategy is to be created and implemented. Because if the CEO is not behind any significant strategic initiative, folks, it's a problem. So the strategic project leader facilitates and guides this, and I've got tons of experience there. So we're looking for a high value outcome, and what does that look like? It has comprehensive data engineering, something that I call precision configuration, which I'll explain in a little more detail a bit later. The systems are integrated at the data level, and that's an important point. There's an obsession with technical integration, but you may want a third-party add-on that doesn't fully integrate with your ERP, and there are ways of doing that at the data level, and talk about that in the precision configuration presentation if you give me the opportunity to present that. Then system operational efficiency and precision, absolutely key. Strategic alignment of operational systems. everything should be done aligned with strategy, and that's a key part of the value that I bring to you. Integrated holistic business operations, as I've said before, the CEO owns that view of the business. The business must be running smoothly. And the fact that your business, that Stuart Turner has grown to the size that it has, says to me that you're doing a lot right. And part of my role here would be to understand what it is that you're doing right and how to support that, enhance that, and grow that. And then you want comprehensive management information with full drill down. And beyond that, you want comprehensive strategic analysis and decision support capability, which is really, in my contention, 80% of what you need for a high value outcome. So the strategic project leader working with EXCO is absolutely vital. So some techniques of CEO custody. I like to put my head around the door of the CEO at the start and end of every day that I'm on site, just for 5 minutes, quick heads up. This is what I've got planned for the day. Are there any things you want me to look at? This is what happened today. Anything that I need to report back to you. When the SPL is not on site, a quick Zoom, Teams, or phone call pretty much every day. I like to copy the CEO with all emails relating to the project, set it up with the inbox rules in Outlook with a separate email folder or set of email folders. CEO only reads the email if it's addressed to them personally, else they skim the subject lines and drill down where relevant. Folks, it's an abstract project. There's a hang of a lot going on that the CEO is not going to see. By copying the CEO with all the emails and just glancing at the subject lines, they have a sense of what's going on. And if there's something that's going a bit awry, you can take it up and dive down. I like to have a weekly one-on-one with the CEO to review progress and address queries, etc. Folks, if the CEO wants to have a one-on-one with a group meeting with other people, the CIO, whatever, happy to do that. But there's certain things that I can discuss with the CEO in private that I can't discuss with the CEO with other people present. And then the CEO chairs the weekly project meeting, may delegate that to myself, but the CEO needs to be in the room. So I've chaired project meetings with the CEO sitting right next to me and just giving me backup in what I say to the contractors, etc. CEO should chair the monthly project board meeting with my support, and we should have periodic detailed walkthroughs with all relevant execs and managers. We're talking about an investment that needs to last for, in my opinion, at least 20 years. Whatever ERP you buy now, you should never have to change. So we need to implement it with that mindset. And folks, with regard to what's on the screen right now, if the CEO cannot see themselves doing this, or certainly most of this, then we really need to check whether you have a business case for a new ERP. And we need to have a discussion about what can we do to upgrade what you've got. And I understand you've got different units with different ERPs, and there are things we can do about that. And that's not part of the current brief, so I'm not going to go there, but we can discuss it when we meet if you want to. So to sum up about CEO custody, the CEO owns the strategic helicopter view. CEO custody is therefore not negotiable. Folks, to be quite honest, I've reached a point at my stage in life that I will not tackle a project like this if I do not have a direct line of communication with the CEO. Only the CEO can kick butt to get all working together, and sometimes that's necessary. Hopefully it never is, but sometimes it is. And then executive intelligence out requires executive intelligence in. Only the CEO has the complete picture. If you implement this with the, and please, I don't mean any offense to other execs who are listening to this, but if the CFO sponsors the project, it will have a finance bias. Likewise, Chief Operating Officer, likewise, Chief Information Officer. The only person who can maintain a balanced view of the entire enterprise is, with respect, the Chief Executive. It's not necessarily a lot of work, but it's up to the CEO how much they want to dive into the detail. I've had CEOs who really, really get into the detail, and that's a good thing. And but it's not a lot of work. It's about working clever. The magnitude of the investment warrants the time investment, and the scale of the downside risk warrants the time investment. And I suggest for your consideration that the strategic project leader is absolutely vital to facilitate this. So I keep using the word strategy. What do I mean by strategy? Well, many years ago, I wrote a paper on the importance of aligning IT with business strategy. And I thought, I'm a military man. I'll just do a short military metaphor to define strategy. And after 3 pages, I discovered I couldn't define strategy. And I came across the work of Professor Malcolm MacDonald, who says that strategy is doing the right things, viewed from the customer's perspective, and tactics are doing things right, also viewed from the customer's perspective. Malcolm goes on to say that if you do the right things well, your organization will thrive, and that's where my logo comes from. I'm about helping clients to achieve thrive outcomes. In other words, helping them to do the right things well. If Malcolm goes on to say, if you do the right things not so well, your organization will survive. If you do the wrong things, your organization will die. It's just a matter of how quickly, and the better you get at doing the wrong things, the faster you will die. Now, a couple of points there. Malcolm and I are quite good friends. I have lunch with him every now and again. He's 87, I think, now. Sadly diagnosed with skin cancer a few weeks ago, which I'm very sad about. His wife's very ill. Sorry, I deviated a bit there. The mining company that I mentioned a minute ago got very good at doing the wrong things, wiped out. You clearly, Stuart Turner, are doing the right things well. Otherwise, you wouldn't be where you are in the market. You wouldn't have the presence that you've got in the market. And you're growing and you're looking at a new ERP. What we've got to make sure is that this new ERP is selected to be the right ERP with the right implementer, very, very well implemented. And I'm your man to help you do that. So going further, what is strategy? Professor Michael Porter of Harvard Business School. Strategy is the creation of a unique and valuable position involving a different set of activities. Strategy is making trade-offs and competing and choosing what not to do. Create competitive advantage, differentiation. The essence of strategy is integration, the ability to see in a complex, holistic way. Technology is not strategy. Folks, the fundamental custodian of this is the chief executive, and I've been creating competitive advantage with IT for decades. The first piece of software that I ever wrote from business for my dad's investment consulting way back when our computers were just in their infancy. I did some clever things and enabled him to do things his competitors couldn't do, and he was able to double his turnover by securing new customers in the space of 1 year. So from the beginning of my career in the use of computers in business, I have focused on creating competitive advantage, and a couple of clients who I've done work for are extremely profitable. And I believe that one of the reasons they're profitable is because they have really good management information, and I claim some kudos for that. So another definition of strategy, Dr. Michel Robert, Decision Processes International. Every organization has a single strategic driving force that determines what it does and how it succeeds. So, for example, he says Volvo's strategic driving force is safety, whereas Honda's is engine technology, and that explains their very different approach to motor cars, etc., etc. And again, the strategic project leader to facilitate is essential. So what is strategy? So I started that voyage of discovery many years ago, and I took on board what I just shared with you, and I did things in practice and explored, and I concluded that strategy is the essence of why the organization exists and how it thrives. It's intuitive, it's intuited. In other words, the founders of the business saw an opportunity and they pursued it. It's generally discovered, not invented. This thing of coming in and bringing in high-flying consultants to help you invent a strategy. Very, very skeptical of that. My view is you discover the strategy and you enhance it and elaborate it and strengthen it. And by the way, it virtually never changes. And there's a fairly broad consensus on that among strategy experts, is that when an organization has a strategy, it virtually never changes. And you need to know the strategy and the strategic driving force. And that's a big reason why the Daimler-Benz, the Chrysler Benz, Daimler Chrysler, merger failed. Strategy is a holistic integrated picture of how the entire organization fits together and interoperates with the external environment to produce a thrive outcome. My definition after years of exploring, investigating, facilitating, and diagnosing the essence of why the organization exists and how it thrives. Moving on, the time dependency of strategy, it's not a forecast. You need to do a forecast for your strategic planning process, but a forecast is not a strategic plan. It's also not about goal setting. It's not about an objective. You have to have strategic objectives, but that's also not a strategic plan. And so what we find is that strategy implementation, a strategic plan, is a realistic trajectory of continuous improvement within business constraints. And the business is like the ship. You can't just click your fingers and change direction. You've got to follow that red line. You see in the bridge below the same catenary, an exponential curve. And it's physics, folks. And so value delivery takes time. It's going to take some years between the time that you commence your ERP project and the time that you start to realize full value from that investment, if you ever realize value from the investment. And I have to stress to you, I'm sorry to be brutal about it, there are a lot of businesses out there that are not getting real value from their ERP implementation. And just bringing that back to business, this is a graph from a book, Jim Collins' Good to Great, case study of Gillette. And what you see there is that the red line on the previous slide exactly fits the growth of Gillette to a world-class organization on the New York Stock Exchange. So I'm not talking fluffy stuff here. This is hard business reality, folks. So strategic definition and alignment start with strategic discovery. I need to understand the essence of the business that needs to be agreed to and understood by all, and I have methods of discovering that. We need strategic facilitation to translate that into action, and again, I have methods for that. We need to develop a concise, simple statement for the project that guides everything else, can help you there. We need to be clear how the organization thrives, and I will work with you to, if you don't have a clear definition of that, and often I find that execs don't, we will discover that and unpack it. It's not complex. It's about asking the right questions and making the right decisions. That informs every facet of the organization. Clear understanding of the strategic essence is absolutely paramount. I've written about it, 8-page article on strategic essence, which I'm very happy to share with you if you are interested. And then true strategic focus, doing the right things from the customer's perspective, how to differentiate, strategic driving force, essence of the organization and how it thrives, enhance the right things, minimize the wrong things. Those last two have a tendency to get overlooked. Figure out what the right things are for your organization to be doing, and just make them very, very sure that your ERP implementation is supporting those things and not getting in the way of any of them. So clear facilitation by the SPL is vital to achieving that. So some considerations. The strategic project leader guides the entire project. I should be focused on the 20% of requirement that drives 80% of the strategic value, differentiation, profitability. They're vital principles that must be applied. And it's a consolidated view that I offer you that's based on decades of experience. And folks, I would be absolutely delighted to do this for you. I've had a look at your website. I've got a bit of a sense of what you're about. I think there's a, a lot of strategic synergy there, and I really, really would love to work. So then if we talk about an engineering approach, there's a bridge in South Africa, Bloemfont's Bridge. It's quite an attractive bridge to my way of thinking as a civil engineer. And engineers do not design bridges to stand up. There you see the bridge failure. Forget where it was. I think it was in Minneapolis a few years ago. And what you discover is that engineers design bridges not to fall down. A key responsibility of the strategic project leader working with the CEO is to make sure that the project succeeds and doesn't fail. But you don't achieve success by designing for success. You achieve success by defining what success looks like and then making sure that you don't fail in that endeavor. So an engineering approach, design against failure, critically examine everything, no sacred cows, robust, rigorous procurement approach, robust contract, business understand the organization at a mature level. Business has to learn the ERP, and that's a big uphill journey, folks. And the implementers need to understand the ERP at a mature level, so they need to learn the business. So what you have on day one of the project is you've got a bunch of people who understand the business and know nothing about the ERP, and a bunch of people who understand the ERP and know nothing about the business. The art of ERP implementation is to facilitate the cross-pollination of ideas so that by the time the project is complete, the business thoroughly and completely understands the ERP, which requires that by that point, the implementers thoroughly understand the business. And I offer particular skills in terms of facilitating that. So you need senior, mature, experienced team members on both sides. And one of the things that speaks to is the procurement, that you make sure that the team that the implementer delivers to implement your project is an A team of experienced people, and they don't fob you off with the C team after they've used the A team to sell to you. And my methods of procurement make sure that doesn't happen. So you want high levels of accountability on both sides, because either side can be slack and ill-disciplined, and that needs to be managed. And that speaks to me, on the one hand, monitoring that sort of thing, and on the other hand, going to the CEO and saying, you know what, Joe is not pulling his weight in that area, or Anne is not pulling her weight in that area. And I think it would be helpful for you just to have a quiet conversation with her. It's not for me to go to Anne and say, hey, Anne, you're not shaping up. You need to pull your socks up, because I don't have that authority, and I don't want that authority. It's not my role. You need high levels of accountability, and you need precision. And so the SPL is a key role there. So we're talking about ERP projects, engineer not to fail. And it's a truism that most CEOs know where they want to take the ERP, but don't know how to get there. As a civil engineer and former military commander, I've applied engineering principles to ERP procurement, configuration, and implementation for many years. Folks, I've been there, done that, got a cupboard full of T-shirts, and some of them are quite bloody. So what's not an engineering approach? You know, as a youngster, I'm talking probably about 5, 6 years old, I used to have a dream where I'd be in a crowded room with my parents and their friends, and I would stand on a chair and flap my arms and gently float around the room looking at what was going on. And I have to say to you that if you got on top of one of these buildings and jumped off flapping your arms and saying, I can fly, it would be a bloody mess. So there's a thing about not pulling rabbits out of the hat, because it's really done with smoke and mirrors. And unfortunately, there is a tendency between people who sell big business systems, including ERPs, to magically promise pulling rabbits out of hats. And I can help you to make sure that what you get is substantial and not a rabbit. So failure and success. One of the services that I've been offering for many years is a pulse measurement, what I call a pulse measurement, which is a play on me being a doctor investigating suboptimal ERP implementation. And I got into that by accident. I started speaking at conferences way back on some of the successes that I'd had and the vision that I had. And CEOs, CFOs, chairman, whatever, would come up to me during the break and say, Dr. Robertson, we really like what you've got and what you shared, but we're nowhere close to that. Please come and have a look and tell us what's wrong. And I found that I could go in 1 to 10 days, and generally 1 to 2 days, I could tell them what was wrong, and I could tell them how to fix it. And the interesting thing about it is almost never technology. So I do executive interviews to understand the essence and concerns, and I drill down to the systems. I produce a short letter report with about 7 bullet point findings, weighted in terms of relative importance to my conclusions, and about 7 recommended actions also weighted. The findings are frequently so practical the client can continue unaided, and in some cases I've managed to turn around the situation in 24 hours simply by pointing out to the client that they were doing something that was just totally getting in the way of the system. So, for example, I had a situation where there was an admin lady who was changing the project number on the biggest project of the firm because the people were all using the wrong project number, but she didn't tell anybody, so the data was all in the wrong project, and they thought it was something wrong with the system. So it was just, and me, Peter, please explain what you're doing with the projects, and problem solved. Literally, they were on the point of trashing the system. So I've conducted dozens of these. I've got a deep understanding of what really matters and what can damage a project. So much so that many years ago I wrote the book Critical Factors for Information Technology Investment Success, which some people tell me is quite a good book. I don't know. I haven't read it since I published it. But I've been teaching and applying the principles in the book for years. And you'll see the McDonald's matrix there: thrive, survive, die fast, die slowly. Slightly different. And as a consequence, as I mentioned, I've been presenting short courses and executive briefings based on the book Why Your ERP is Not Delivering and How to Fix It, ERP and Strategic and Competitive Management, the Critical Factors for ERP Invest. And while I was in South Africa, it was a steady source of business. I'd run those 3 events probably in total about 6 to 10 times a year. And out of every event, I would get a few customers. And it was a really effective pipeline, which I lost completely when I came here because I didn't actually register that that's what I had. So I've done it dozens of times over many years. So I really have a deep understanding of my methods, and many delegates have become clients. So a few clients, and I appreciate you're not really going to have much empathy with these because they're nearly all in South Africa. But I've worked with some big companies, Anglo American, I'm sure you've heard of. The critical factors causing failure, based on the book, mythology, inappropriate executive custody, etc. And what you find is that inappropriate or ineffective executive custody is about 19% of why projects fail, or put that the other way around, 19% of suboptimal projects are suboptimal because of inappropriate or ineffective custody, governance, and corporate policy. So as a strategic project leader, I understand that, and I will integrate that into the project design. And then if we look at the factors for success, also based on the book, slightly revised in terms of more recent experience, again, we see effective executive custody up the top there, change facilitation and so forth, and 22% executive custody, and I will ensure that that takes place. That's the nub of what I'm proposing to you. So let's talk about the diffusion of innovation. A big piece of the project, as I said a minute ago, is that you've got business competence and technology competence, and they sit in different people, and you need to meld that together. Personality profiles and related human traits. Some personalities are quite difficult to work with. So you start out with solution knowledge, and then you get solution experience, which leads to what I call the laboratory. And in the whole thing, communication is key, and the diffusion of innovation is a fundamental point to understand, because you're going to start off with a few people who are innovators in the project, but at the end of the day, you need to take the whole business along with you. So the CEO, supported by the strategic project leader, guides the overall outcome. Some critical differentiators of business: management of the human resource, market-focused strategy, strategic decision-making, strategically configured business information systems, overall strategic capability, the ability to visualize the future business state and get there. Virtually no one is getting any of these right in terms of what is truly possible. True strategic capability is a fundamental requirement. And so in this role that I'm proposing to you, I bring an understanding of that and help to integrate it into the project design. If we step back and look at the role of the EXCO on this project, what is the responsibility of executives? First of all, creating and delivering value to customers, differentiating from the competition, motivating and leading personnel, meeting and exceeding owner expectations, building exceptional partnerships with suppliers, integrating and optimizing the business. That's the strategic essence. That's what the business should be focused on. And then day-to-day operational efficiency and effectiveness may be 5% of how execs spend their time. Most businesses, the execs spend 95% of their time on day-to-day and not on strategy, because they grow up through the organization. Nobody takes them aside when they become an executive and says, actually, this is what strategy is about and how you manage it. And I tend to compensate with that, and I lead people to a strategic understanding. So let's talk a little bit about the approach. How do we go about achieving executive custody? I've found over the years that there are 4 components. First is engagement. So you've got to spend time on the project. The next is leadership. So you've got to lead from the front, and then prove it works. And I'll more about that in a minute. And then make it work. So there has to be a strong resolve to do all of these things and make sure that it is working. And then at the end of the day, executives need to take a strong stand that you make it work. I had an interesting experience with a client some years ago. They had a big American ERP. They were very unhappy with it, to the point of thinking of scrapping it, and they'd only recently commissioned it. And I did an investigation. I produced a detailed report of all the things that needed fixing, but they were fixable. And I reported back to the CEO, and we had an 2-day executive workshop to discuss the direction and the strategy, etc. I took them through a whole strategic process. And at lunchtime on the second day, I took the CEO on one side and I said to him, look, I think you can see that everybody actually knows at a gut feel level that this can work, but they're all ducking and diving behind this hypothesis that this is going to be replaced, and therefore they're not giving it their all. I would suggest to you that you just take a strong stand and tell them to make it work. And literally, he got up after lunch with a stand very similar to that photograph. And he said, gentlemen, you've all seen what we've seen. This can work. Now make it work. And I don't want any more excuses. Thank you. And that was the end of the workshop. So that's an example of what can be achieved by making sure you do the right things well. In terms of governance, CEO leadership and direction is vital. A strategic planning workshop without the CEO is not strategic. Executive time impacts must be taken into account. It requires a mature and experienced facilitator. I've certainly got plenty of that. And executive ownership, CEO. So the guidance is critical. And then just to recap, the CEO is the custodian, must be in critical sessions to provide overarching decisions. You can, once you've got the overall framework, you can go lower down in the organization for the detail. Executive team must be highly engaged for their specific areas. CEO, again, owns the integrated view, and I speak business language and I can speak tech language, and that's part of the bridging that I provide. Strategic analysis with the Exco, and this is how I would start the project. If you appoint me, I would do initial one-on-one Exco interviews and other interviews, and we would then run a one or two workshops, critical concerns with regard to the project, critical strategic requirements, critical success factors, and then possibly one or two extra workshops with manufacturing, ops, finance, etc., which I would agree with the CEO early on in the project. It sets the strategic direction. The method and tool that I used have been perfected over a number of years based on XMAR from McDonald, endorsed by McDonald, informed by strategic driving force. It's a synthesis of all the above with my engineering and military quick attack thinking, and it focuses on the strategic 20% and moves fast to capture the objective of an excellent outcome. Fast, collaborative, and it's Pareto. So just a little bit of a brag here. Professor Malcolm MacDonald, who, as I said, is, I'm not going to say he's a good friend, but we have lunch now and again. And, well, he thinks I'm quite a good guy. So I've got a lot to offer. I can make a difference to Turner Stuart Turner. My apologies. Why 7 factors? Miller's law, also known as Frere's law, the Frere rule. 7 plus or minus 2 is the ideal number of items in a list. Presentation, theory, governance, etc. It ensures the plan is easy to understand, assimilate, and action, and it brings about focus. Instead of having long, ragged lists of requirements. So come up with 7 factors. Each person weights privately. This is now done with the Exco. And then there's shares in terms of why. You'll see there's, for example, the second one down, effective remote support. One person thinks it's 15%, somebody else thinks it's 5%. So we have a brief discussion of why that is. And to put that in context, the reality is that everybody sees the problem differently, and I like to look at it as a mountain. So Exco, executives, production, ops, marketing, finance, all see things differently, and there's a mountain and a contour map of that mountain. And basically what it looks like is that some people will look at the ERP project and say this is easy, and others will say, my goodness, this really looks like a mountain to me. And then if you're going to tackle a big project and your objective is to get to the top of the mountain, and everybody's looking at it from their perspective and saying, well, this is the best way to climb the mountain because it's the only way they understand. It's not it's not the right way to climb the mountain, folks. You need to agree one way up the mountain and then mobilize the whole team behind that set of priorities. And my process will do that. One of the outputs of the process is this thing that I call a strategic trajectory. So in this case, we're looking at a 3-year plan. It could be a 6-month plan. It could be a 5-year plan. It could be a 10-year plan. How well were we doing 3 years ago? How well are we doing today? How well will we be doing in 3 years' time if we keep doing what we're doing? How well do we want to be doing? So the pink line there is where we want to be with the ERP. That gives us a gap. And we look at the gap and we apply the weights to the scores, and generally we'll find that 2 or 3 of the gaps are amplified by the weights, and 2 or 3 are really downsized to a point that they're not really worth worrying on. So again, this Pareto thing, focusing on what will really make a difference. We then analyze each gap, and what that looks like is we've got our forecast, we've got our objective, we've got the gap, and we formulate no more than 7 projects, initiatives, policies to close that gap. We look at accountability, we look at the timeline, we look at resources, we look at people and cash. And folks, this is at a strategic executive level. How are we going to tackle this project from a business point of view? What are the things that are important from a business point of view? And that informs the discussion with the implementers. Incidentally, that will be done before you've appointed the ERP, selected the ERP, or appointed the implementers. It's a business plan. End result of that, everything's weighted in terms of relative contribution to closing the gap. And in this particular case, the client team came up with 42 projects, of which 4 would contribute 21% of closing the gap. So again, a Pareto thing, zooming in on what's really going to make a difference. So I want to talk briefly about precision configuration. It's a big subject. I've got many man years of experience with this, a lot of original thought, coming off a base of zoology, military classifications, library science, and I've got a whole presentation on this that I'd like to share with you, but we need to get past the point of meeting with you first. So important to understand that computers can collect, collate, summarize, synthesize, and present information. People interpret the results, take decisions, and implement those decisions. So the importance of precision configuration is to facilitate the ease of interpretation. So we're looking for the right decision. That's the goal. And the fundamental challenge is to get the right information to the right person at the right time in order to make the right decision. That's what delivers the real value, Thrive decisions. And I'm going to contend that is less about the technology and more about the precision configuration. In fact, I will go so far as to say to you that I can take just about any ERP for your business and implement it really well. And there are a lot of people who can take just about any ERP for your business and implement it really badly. So that's a separate discussion, and we can discuss that when we meet face to face. So complexity versus keep it simple, stupid. The reality is, folks, that your business is complex, and you need to model that complexity in the data. And if you don't, the system will be difficult to use. You'll have all sorts of fiddly reports. You'll have all sorts of maintenance. You'll have all sorts of complexity in the extract, transform, load into the data warehouse. You'll have all sorts of complexity in your business intelligence system. And it'll be like running in mud. And you don't want that. You want a really slick, effective, efficient, easy to use system that answers any question you can think of at the touch of a button. And precision configuration is huge as far as that's concerned. So evaluating ERP value, it should be integrated at the data level, operational efficiency and precision, holistic operations, precision configuration, etc. Folks, what you really need is comprehensive, high-value, strategic decision-making, Thrive information. Transaction processing is mundane. Folks, a creditor's a debtor's a debtor, a stock item's a stock item. It's what you do with that data, how you classify that data, how you manipulate that data, how you look at trends, how you look at exceptions, etc., at a strategic level aligned with those Thrive parameters. What are the right things from the customer's perspective done right? So you unlock ERP value by intuitively fundamental, meaningful information. Packaged such that the computer system appears intelligence, presented through reports, graphs, dashboards, etc. There are advanced techniques that you can use for that, and the more precise your data is, the more powerful those techniques become, and you can get much better strategic, tactical, and operational decisions out of it, resulting in improved organizational profitability and growth. So their core requirement is answers to any question I can think of asking the ERP, data warehouse, BI, like that, easily and quickly without major effort. The right information at the right place at the right time in order to make the right decision. Nothing is more important than high quality, timeous executive decisions. Creation of value, business actions that deliver on the strategic essence, increase profitability, growth and acquisitions, job satisfaction, intuitive decisions facilitated and accelerated through intelligent information, require strategic executive input, answers to questions I've not thought to ask. It's a big thing, folks. You can either scramble I've got a situation and I need an answer to this quickly. Oh, well, it's going to take us a week to pull that out and put it in Excel and manipulate it and filter it, and we have to do some research, and that information is not in the system, etc., etc. No, should be able to answer at the click of a button. The position in configuration is the definition of information content, structurally, taxonomically, fundamentally meaningful, translated into structural codes with minimum human intervention, so the computer system appears to be intelligent. There's a separate detailed presentation on this, which I'd like to give you at your convenience, assuming that after you watch this, you still want to meet me. So the business intelligence challenge, most businesses are not making better decisions despite substantial investments. Most ERP implementations did not deliver what was promised. Most ETL into the data warehouse and most BI is unscrambling the spaghetti, badly structured data. Precision configuration is the missing link, and it's a huge opportunity. So just an example, this was an interview with the chief executive of Anglo American Platinum Division, which employs about 60,000 people. And in a one-on-one private off-the-record interview, he said to me, at an operational level, SAP is working well. At an executive level, it's 1 out of 10. And I only give it, and I'd say overall, it's a 3 out of 10 because I've got excellent people working for me. And the interesting thing about it was that in the road between Johannesburg and Pretoria, sort of one of the main thoroughfares of South Africa, it's a huge billboard saying Anglo American Platinum Division runs SAP R3. They had 4 senior accountants, and when I say senior, I'm talking high-end company cars and executive officers who spent 3 weeks a month to produce the board pack using huge and complex spreadsheets because they could not get the information they needed from SAP ERP as well as SAP Data Warehouse and the associated BI system. It was a terrible configuration. I'll show you what it looks like. And the tragedy of this was I was brought in by the CIO, who was really just the IT manager because he wasn't a C-suite executive. He reported to the chief financial officer, and because I'd gone in through the CIO, I was obligated to go through his chain of command. So I prepared my report. He took me to meet the CFO, present my findings, and I started presenting my findings, and after about 5 minutes, I realized from the glazed look on the CFO's face that he was totally disinterested, and then the penny dropped that if they did what I was advising them to do, there would not be his 4 senior people who were his little empire, and his hay grade would drop. So that was the end because I couldn't ethically go over his head. Sad, but true. So this is the chart of accounts, total lack of hierarchy and structure, difficult to write even a simple report. Just look at the top red oval there, plant spares, which is a huge topic. And then down a few lines further down, you've got food stuff. There's no congruency, there's no logic, there's no structure in that list. It's difficult to create even a simple report. So what you end up with, plant spares, you've got to go to another system to figure out the analysis of plant space, and the same with foodstuffs. It's what I call sloppy configuration, and this is the material group. So duplicate codes, no structure. You've got conveyor idlers, you've got bicycles, commercial vehicles, steam locos, diesel, battery locos, rail sleepers, pipe and pipe fittings. And you've got 3 pipe and pipe fittings, no differentiation. It's crazy, folks. And you may not have data that looks like this, but I've seen a lot of companies that have data that look like this, and they blame the ERP. Call it sloppy configuration. And then something that I would strongly recommend that we do, assuming you appoint me, is what I call the cubic business model, which is absolutely core to information integration across all the modules and software applications. It's quite a big subject on its own right. I've got specialist software to help me manage that. This is a representation of the cubic model. So every business has locations where we do what we do, sometimes called branches. They have functions, what we do, sometimes called departments. You can plot it out in a grid. And I do that with a very high level of precision, which allows you to do all sorts of interesting things with the data, including it allows you to build a model where you roll your overheads up across the board and get effectively, in inverted commas, an activity-based view of your finances and linking that through to your operational system. Benefits, done properly, it gives you a strategic executive view. It allows you to do some neat presentation. Operation reporting is streamlined. Improves data quality. Your data warehouse mapping is simplified, so your data warehouse becomes more powerful, and your BI likewise, and it results in greatly improved management reporting. It enables advanced models. It's greatly improved support for high-value decisions. As I said a moment ago, I've got a detailed presentation which I would love to share with you when we meet face-to-face. A few other points. Soft issues and change impact. So the management of change is a key part of such a project. You do not justify an ERP on the basis of headcount reduction, folks. You will have all sorts of nasty negative consequences if you motivate a project on the basis of headcount reduction. I once did an investigation for a company that their whole motivation was headcount reduction. So before they even went live, they let a few people go, and then a year later they still hadn't gone live, and they couldn't work out why. And it was because the people on the ground said, well, if they could let people go before it goes live, so what's going to happen when they do go live? So they just made sure it never ran live. But interestingly enough, if you have a good design, you will probably get a headcount reduction. It's just the chicken and egg that you've got to get right. And as I said, the first person to realize the job will go away is the incumbent, who is frequently the person that you really need to help you set up a new system. Again, leadership is vital, overall human resource oversight is vital. And then I advocate what I call the laboratory in war games, which is typically called end user acceptance testing. This is just a more rigorous approach, making sure you've got all the data, and then go all out to break the configuration until it can't be broken. So you take all your obscure circumstances and you run them through the laboratory. When it's all there and it can't be broken, then you can develop and test your reports, your data warehouse, ETL, your BI. You can prescribe your workflows and the related configuration process, develop training material, and train all your staff. Once you've done all that, you can issue your go live certificate. But remember, we're talking here about an investment which should be a minimum of 20 years. So it's worth doing this really properly. So CEO and strategic project leader oversight is vital. As far as technology is concerned, please don't cut corners. Hardware and network is not the place to save money. I've seen some horrible situations where the business has been a bit short-sighted in terms of their hardware expenditure. Don't go for gimmicky technology. Avoid bleeding edge. Choose mainstream software, proven and reliable. No reason to go with unproven technology. Apparent technology problems are seldom really technology. They're mostly governance and like related issues. People are at the root of most technology issues. The person holding the gun is the problem, not the gun. So just to make the point, if that gun is pointed at you, it's bad. If it's pointed at somebody you think is bad, then it's good. The stethoscope is absolutely useless if you don't know how to interpret the sounds on the stethoscope. So the ERP dream, we've talked about this before, raised the strategic decision support value of the ERP investment to the maximum support level. V3 case study. I've done that for a few other clients. Let's see, then procurement, just touch on that. And again, I've got a separate presentation for this. I've got a very robust process, well-proven document pack, tough request for proposal that closes all the loopholes, detailed bill of services as a basis for payment, structured weighted adjudication factors, certificates, prescribed table of contents so you can compare bids. It's based on civil engineering tender process, and it was developed in conjunction with a large engineering client. So that's the list of all the documents off my hard drive. And each one of those documents has been carefully crafted and refined and proven. It's a comprehensive process. It covers all bases and it makes sure you can compare apples with apples. And in that process, we clearly specify the strategic requirements in the process. Tough RFP. We make sure that only the people who are going to do the work are engaged in presenting the product. We narrow down the price. We work towards a fixed price. We make sure we select the right software with the right implementer at the right price and secure a fixed price and a tough contract. And we get to build a relationship with the successful implementer before the contract is signed. So we filter out the chances. So that's an example of a bid submission for a project that I did a few years ago. And as I say, I'll present that separately if we get to meet in person. So to sum up, defects are entirely preventable. ERP is not magic, so don't abdicate your intellect. Design against failure. Slow the ERP down to your speed. Align the ERP with the essence of the business strategy. CEO, custody, and leadership are critical. Take charge. The right strategic project leader is vital. And folks, I can do that for you. I would really, really love to meet you. And I'm very, very confident that I can add huge value to Stuart Turner. So just to wrap up then, Bill Gates is quoted as having said, if you do not act within 48 hours, you probably never will. That relates to new ideas. And I'd like to ask you to consider what is your single most important insight from this presentation, and what is the single most practical action that you can take tomorrow to apply ERP more effectively. So please write down your thoughts now. I'll give you a moment just to think about that. Are there any questions? And obviously you're not here to ask me the questions, but I would really be delighted to meet with you face to face, and then I can answer all your questions. So folks, thanks very much. It's been a pleasure delivering this to you, and I look forward to the pleasure of meeting you face to face. Cheerio.